The world is changing yet again. As the founder of a company that produces both public and business data, I can tell you this is a most exciting moment. Phase one looked very broadly. Phase one of the digital revolution was about communication and connection. Phase two is about turning all that activity into data and then using that data to improve all our lives. Britain traditionally has been the boffins, has produced the boffins, the bright ideas. We generate the excitement, but we don't mint the money. In fact, we tend to act, and this is a phrase I've stolen from Saul Klein, we act like the world philanthropists of talent. We give it to everybody else. So our challenge is to turn our open data visions with all our wonderful puppy-like enthusiasm into bankable economic growth, right here and quickly. It's not enough to have a vision. It's not enough to have a policy. We have to have a clearly defined, highly visible national strategy and an implementation plan that can be transparently audited. Only then will we create a predictable environment that allows businesses, public services and citizens to cash in on the social and economic benefits that are promised by this new world of data. So the foundation of my recommendations is that we define a national core reference data set. It should be designed strategically, combining the basic data by which we define and understand the nation. And it should include the data that is most useful for driving social and economic gain. This national core reference data will then be the backbone of public sector information and the backbone of a data revolution led by Britain. My other recommendations are making this all secure so that citizens have no fears about their privacy being compromised. This is of the highest importance. We can gain the value of data and retain confidentiality if A, we ensure that all case-level open data is anonymized, and of course the government would never release data at a non-anonymized basis. I also recommend that we focus investment in our data capability. Data is of no value unless it can be put to good use. This means that we need to produce more data scientists, and there should be plenty of them employed throughout, throughout government. And we need to invest in basic data science. My last recommendation is that government must eat its own lunch. It must formally embed structured data in how it develops, modifies, monitors and adapts public policy. Finally, for the question and answer, I want to re-emphasize my main challenge to government: to design a clear national data strategy founded on a national core reference data set with a visible, predictable, auditable implementation plan. I trust the government to take on with enthusiasm this vital challenge, which is also its clear duty of defining and delivering a visible, truly world-leading strategy for public sector information. Thank you. All of what I've done here is to talk about the broad principles that ought to apply to the creation then of a real, concrete, detailed strategy, which has to have all of that in it and has to then be transparent and this phrase that I keep using, auditable. You've got to see what's out there. You've got to see what's therefore not in there. And you've got to have a way back to obviously there's ODUG exists and a few other things, but there needs to be a very clear channel for doing all of that. This document does not define what core reference data is. It says that the government should produce a definition of core reference data that includes the connective tissue, if you like, as we put it in here, of the nation, of the data. You just need to know where you are and what's happening and so forth. And it should include the data that is of greatest economic value, not just defined by the base level data, but there may be other types of data that are really valuable. I mean, obviously, some health data would be in that and some health data wouldn't, but we would want all of it ultimately to be in there. To not have a national data reference set, to not have and drive hard and in a clear, auditable way all the things we need to do to keep us first, would be a dereliction of duty. I mean, this is the biggest thing that's happening to this country, to our world. It will change as much in the next 10 years as it changed in the last 20. I'm convinced of that. If you talk to data scientists, they're saying that you're no doubt one of them, that the increase in the capacity is so incredible that it will change our lives even more, as I say, than it has so far. My fundamental take-home, as it were, is that we've made a fabulous start on a great opportunity, but we now need something that really looks and feels like a strategy that is implemented to a plan that we can all see, that we can all influence, and that we can all complain about if it's not kept to. That's essentially what I'm saying. All the rest is padding around it, as it were. That's the one thing that we have to get. And if that's all that we can achieve with this review, then I think we'll have achieved a great deal. So there's no question that investing in this pays off. You only have to look, I'm sorry to reference it again, but you have to look what America does. We think of America, which it is a very open and free and light touch government, they often like to say. Of course, government has been absolutely massive in driving America's advantage in the internet. You only have to look at driverless cars. I mean, the teams that created that in Stanford, paid for government money, all went en masse to Google. Right? It's not as if there's no support from government for all of the amazing innovation and business development that we've seen in America.
We're releasing all this data as a government, and we're going to release far more with people like Stefan driving us. The question is, how does government itself use that data? Clearly, it's going to spawn thousands of businesses. Clearly, it already is. It's going to support huge innovation that we can't predict, and that's wonderful. But how do ministers and civil servants make decisions in government, and how are they going to start to use data for the first time? Whitehall is largely data-free. Decisions are often made, by senior civil servants based on prior prejudice and heuristics, not on data. And I think a challenge for all of us who are involved in policy making is how do we, in our own experience of policy, our petitioning in government, our life in government, how do we start to use data ourselves to improve our decision-making process? That, I think, is a huge win that needs to be considered alongside the economic opportunity for the country at large.
So the context of this report and the discussion is really looking at a worldwide global shift in the usage of data and the way that we think about data, and saying, do you want to participate or not? Do you want to continue to lead on this issue, or do you want to fall behind and allow others to define it and define the usage of it for you? So what we have to do is we have to make the UK, and London particularly, a magnet for talent. And I'm an immigrant to this country. And how do you create a magnet for talent? Well, certainly immigration is a big issue, and we've kind of shut the gates at the border. I think that there's a broader issue here. When you look at being a leader around open data, is a huge magnet for talent, right? Because it's a zero-sum game. Great talent either comes here or goes somewhere else. And it's probably one of the biggest levers you can pull to continue to be a huge magnet for talent is to be a world leader around this area.
So the UK is in a very fortunate position that we have a health service that's been collecting data on all of us. I can't personally see my own health data. In some countries you can. In Japan you can, for example. That data is a huge opportunity for commercial development. I would describe it as a Google-like opportunity. But timing is absolutely everything, and that question came up earlier. In China, there's similar sort of data sets are being put in place for something like 300 million people, supported by provincial and the central government. If we don't get our act together, that will eclipse us in 5 or 10 years.
At the moment, the most valuable data is broadly locked up on the servers of the company that collected it. It's held in silos. Individuals usually have limited ability to access it in meaningful and useful ways, which is a constraint. And the government's view, and this is what the My Data programme is all about, is that if the individual has the right to access the data themselves in a useful way, in a machine-readable way, And if they have the ability to bring together multiple data sets under their control, so they control security and privacy and that kind of thing, then you get the ability to cross-correlate, and you get the ability to really build interesting innovations. So you bring third-party innovators in there, and the kind of possibilities multiply.
I think it is really important to inject engagement and excitement, because I think what the US has absolutely got it right is they have actually created a playground for innovation and innovators. You know, they know how to engage, they know how to inject excitement.
And so what I miss in this report is firm recommendations for the trading funds, for example, to divide them into infrastructure companies that have the public task and that data should be released, preferably merge all the agencies into a single data warehouse type of organisation. And all the other things, there should be operating companies created out of all the business development activities within government, should be put into operating companies and privatised. If we're going to have an environment in which trading funds and other government departments retain data, then we've got a monopoly situation arising. We've got monopoly rights over value. And it's critical here that we understand that with data, that everybody can have access to the value, all at the same time. We can all produce services, we can all produce new insights with the data without taking government's right away to put its points of view and to develop its claims around data. But we've got to be very clear about what brings private capital to the table here, especially SMEs. What brings us to the table is a chance of an investment return. Open data has no scarcity. We're talking about the economics here. There's no scarcity around open data. Everyone can get it, even a 16-year-old in their bedroom. The reuse margins are very low. Labour is very expensive because you need clever people to use open data, and therefore the data has to be free. And that's why I disagree with the line in the report which says that there can be some charging. I think for the public task data, that should be free, and there shouldn't be any charging of that, because that's what enables private capital to come to the table. And with open licensing, we can then build on it with confidence.